My life was an actuarial table. I'm Elias. I'm a senior risk analyst for a major insurance firm. I don't just dislike danger, I quantify it, assign it a dollar value, and then write a policy to avoid it. My world is predictable. It is safe. It is devoid of variables. My current assignment was a walking, talking variable named Caleb. Caleb ran Vortex Tours, a storm-chasing outfit in Oklahoma that took tourists into the paths of tornadoes. My company insured him, inexplicably, and he was requesting a rate reduction. My job was to do a field assessment. Basically, I had to sit in his truck while he drove into a natural disaster, and then tell my bosses why he was a liability. I met him at a dusty gas station in Norman. He was leaning against a vehicle that looked like a tank bred with a pickup truck. It was covered in hail dents, armored plating, and enough antennas to contact Mars. Caleb himself was high pressure. He was wearing a t-shirt that said "Twist and Shout," faded jeans, and a backwards baseball cap. He had a sunburned nose, wild, wind-blown hair, and a grin that was equal parts charm and insanity. "You the suit?" he asked, eyeing my pressed khakis and polo shirt. "I'm the analyst," I corrected, clutching my clipboard. "And I need to see your safety logs." "Logs are in the back. But we gotta roll. The cap is breaking in El Reno. It's gonna be a monster." He threw my bag into the back seat and practically shoved me into the passenger side. The cab smelled of stale coffee, ozone, and old leather. "Buckle up, Buttercup," he said, firing up the engine. It roared like a dying beast. "We're going hunting." For the next 3 hours, I was terrified. Caleb drove like a man possessed. He had 4 different weather radars running on mounted iPads, a radio scanner screaming static, and he was talking to all of them at once. "Dew point is 65, he yelled over the engine. "Shear is looking beautiful. Look at that hook echo." I looked at the radar. It looked like a red blob of death. "We are entering a zone of extreme unpredictability," I said, scribbling furiously. "Your speed is 20 over the limit. This is reckless." "It's not reckless, it's calculated," he laughed. "You gotta get ahead of the flank to see the show." The sky turned a color I had never seen before, a sickly, bruised green. The wind picked up, tossing tumbleweeds across the road. The air pressure dropped so fast my ears popped. "There," Caleb whispered. The manic energy suddenly vanished, replaced by a hyper-focused, laser-like intensity. He pointed. A mile out, dropping from a wall cloud that looked like the end of the world, was a funnel. It was massive, dark, violent, and churning up the earth. "Tornado," I whispered, my pen freezing on the page. "You have 3, maybe 4, Caleb analyzed, his voice calm. "She's a beauty." We watched it for a minute. It was mesmerizing. And then the wind shifted. "It's turning," I said, my voice rising. "Caleb, it's turning." "I see it." He threw the truck into reverse. "It's cycling. It's growing. We need to punch south." He spun the truck around. But the road, a dirt track softened by the morning's rain, had turned to gumbo mud. The heavy, armored tires spun. We moved a few feet, slid sideways, and settled into a ditch with a sickening lurch. We were stuck, and the tornado was turning right toward us. "Okay," Caleb said. He wasn't laughing anymore. "New plan." He killed the engine. He reached into the back and grabbed 2 heavy Kevlar helmets. He shoved one at me. "Put this on. We have to run," I yelled, fumbling with the strap. "You can't outrun that on foot," he said, his voice hard. "The truck is reinforced. It's anchored. We stay inside. We get low." He grabbed me by the front of my shirt and pulled me down, forcing me to crouch in the footwell of the passenger seat. He dove in on top of me, shielding my body with his own. "Keep your head down," he ordered. "Cover your neck." The sound hit us a second later. It wasn't a roar. It was a physical vibration. It sounded like a freight train was driving directly over our heads. The truck rocked violently. Hail, the size of baseballs, began to hammer the roof and the armored glass. Bang, bang, bang. It sounded like gunfire. I was screaming. I think I was screaming. I couldn't hear myself. I was curled into a ball, my eyes squeezed shut, waiting to be lifted into the sky. Caleb was a heavy, solid weight on top of me. He wasn't screaming. He was shouting instructions I couldn't hear, his arms bracketed around my head, his body taking the brunt of the shaking. He was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to liquid chaos. The truck lifted just an inch and slammed back down. The glass on my side cracked, a spiderweb fracture that hissed. "Hold on!" Caleb roared right into my ear. He pressed me tighter into the floorboards. And then, as quickly as it had ramped up, The roar began to fade. The wind died down from a scream to a howl. The hail stopped. We lay there in the sudden, ringing silence for a long time. I was shaking so hard my teeth were rattling. I couldn't move. I was terrified that if I uncurled, the sky would come back for me. Elias, Caleb's voice was a rough croak. You alive? I think so. He slowly pushed himself up. He checked the windows. The storm had passed us by about 200 yards. We were alive. He reached down and grabbed my arm, hauling me up from the floorboard. We were both awkwardly tangled in the front seat, limbs askew, helmets crooked. He ripped his helmet off and threw it on the dash. He looked at me. His face was pale beneath the sunburn, his eyes wide and dark. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip bruising. Are you hurt? He demanded. Check yourself. Arms? Legs? I did a quick inventory. I'm fine. I'm okay. He let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. Jesus. That was close. That was too close. I looked at him. The adrenaline was crashing through my system like a drug. I looked at the man who had just used his own body as a shield for a guy who was trying to raise his insurance premiums. I started, my voice trembling. You stayed on top of me. You're the client, he said, his voice shaky. Can't let the analyst get dented. It wasn't calculated, I whispered. That wasn't a calculation, Caleb. That was irrational. Yeah, well, he said, running a hand through his messy hair. Nature is irrational. Sometimes you just gotta hold on. We were staring at each other. The cab was small. The air was thick with humidity and fear. I saw the pulse beating in his neck. I saw the sweat on his collarbone. I didn't think about the risk assessment. I didn't think about the policy. I just reacted. I reached out and grabbed the front of his t-shirt. Elias. I didn't answer. I pulled him toward me. He didn't resist. He crashed into me. The kiss was fierce. It was the taste of ozone and sweat and sheer, terrifying survival. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision of two people who needed to prove, physically, that they weren't dead. His lips were hot, his stubble rough against my chin. I buried my hands in his wind-tangled hair, pulling him closer, needing to feel the weight of him again, but this time without the fear. He groaned, a low sound in his throat, and wrapped his arms around my waist, lifting me slightly, pressing me back against the cracked passenger door. The truck was still tilted in the ditch, the world was still gray and dangerous outside, but in that small, broken space, everything was focused on the heat of his mouth on mine. We broke apart, gasping for air, our foreheads resting together. Okay, he breathed, his eyes searching mine. Okay, that was definitely not in the safety log. I laughed, a breathless, hysterical sound. No, I'm gonna have to file a separate report for that. He grinned, that wild, charming grin returning, but softer this time. You do that, analyst. You do that.